Ready to collapse time, crush limitations, and turn potential into reality? This is a journey through real lessons from those who've walked the path before you. Welcome to Layers of Leadership, hosted by Dr. Michael Marion Jr.
Welcome to Layers of Leadership. My name is Dr. Michael Marion, and I have the honor and pleasure to have a dear friend with me today, Dennis Mangers, somebody who has been a mentor, a friend of mine since my time in Sacramento, and I'm honored to pleasure to have you here today on Layers of Leadership.
Thank you. Sure is my pleasure.
All right. So Dennis Mangers retired professionally in 2020 as a strategic advisor for the arts, culture, and the creative economy here in Sacramento. You also, from 2008 to 2009, served as a senior advisor to the president of the California State Senate, Senator Darrell Steinberg.
It's true.
Originally from Inglewood, California.
Inglewood, California.
Inglewood up to no good.
It was different in 1940, but
a little bit different back then. You have been on various committees. You've sat on the California State Assembly, the Rules and Educations Committee, the Health Committee, the Veteran Affairs Committee. Denny, you have been very, very involved throughout the state of California in the politics for a very long time. And I've admired because I've been able to watch and call you a friend, seeing you doing some of this stuff. In addition to that, in 2009, you were a member of the California State Bar Board of Directors as well. And then you served also as a board of governors for the California State University Long Beach.
Also true. Yeah.
You've done it all.
Well, you could say I just can't say no.
That's definitely one way to look at it.
Yeah.
And then from 1976 to 1980, you were a California State Assembly representing the 73rd District.
That's correct. That was in Northwest Orange County.
Wow.
Huntington Beach, Fountain Valley, Costa Mesa, that area down there. Everything from Long Beach to Newport.
Wow. Okay. Went to El Camino Community College, where you were student body president.
Correct.
And then on to Long Beach State, where you got your bachelor's is it elementary education?
Elementary education.
Wow. And then on to our alma mater, USC. Fight
USC
on.
for my master's
For your
in
master's.
School administration.
Wow. It is just an honor and pleasure to have you here. I just, once again, and I know I'm kind of gushing over you, but I do really, really, on record, want to say thank you for being a supporter of me and the community. All the work that you've done has been phenomenal. And as we get ready to jump in even more in depth into the interview, I want to thank you for a piece of advice you gave me. You probably don't remember this.
Oh, I'm always worried about that.
You and I met in 2017 for coffee at Tower Cafe. Not Tower Cafe, a Temple Cafe, Temple Coffee on S Street.
Got it.
And it was a time when I was going through a transition. I was moving from Drexel University over to working for the governor.
Right.
And I had a break in between that. And you said, Mike, one thing that I want to advise you to do while you have this time is double down your time with your kids and your family. And I've took that word to heart, and I can't tell you how thankful I am that you told me that during that time, because I haven't stopped. And one of the things that my wife told me is that we only have 18 summers with our kids, and then they're going to go off and kind of do their own thing.
It's true.
And a buddy of mine, Jim Tabucci, who I'm sure you know, says, actually,
well.
Mike, you have 13 summers with your kids. And so when I think about that conversation, that coffee that we had, I just want to just let you know that you really helped me dial in more than I probably thought I probably would have. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you for that. I'm relieved to hear that that was the piece of advice I gave you. And I'm relieved to hear that you took it and value it.
Yes.
And I can tell you the basis for that advice was on my own experience.
Okay.
I became so passionate and consumed about the things I saw as I became a teacher in the early 60s that I was propelled into a life of elected politics, public service that often was at the deficit for my children. In fact, one day, I don't know if I told you the story, but one day my son told me, Dad, cutting a ribbon at a savings and loan or going to a labor picnic is not fun. you try to make it sound fun because in the limited time we have together, you take us with you. And there will be ice cream and hot dogs and all that, but it's not the same as pure dad time.
Yeah.
So that was a wake-up call. And now my kids are 60 and 53, and my grandkids are 35 and 32. And I've had the opportunity at my age to have a redo. And so I have spent a lot of time the last number of years with both my kids and my grandkids. And so if I had any regret at all, it was that I had not taken the advice they gave you earlier in life.
Well, hey, you're making good on it now with the grandkids, I'm sure.
Doing my very best.
So tell me what it was like growing up in Inglewood and Lawndale.
It was hard scrabble, to tell you the truth, in the 1940s, with the war.
Yeah.
My dad built us a little 2-room house in Lawndale, California, to which we moved around when I was about 7 or 8, and it was only supposed to be temporary, but my mom and dad and my 2 brothers and I lived there 14 years in just these 2 rooms in Lawndale. So it was not easy. We always had enough to eat. We were decently clothed, et cetera, and plenty loved. That was not ever a problem. But it really was tough at times.
Okay.
So, but everybody in the family really encouraged me. And when it came time, they told me, you're going to be the one that goes to college. You're going to be the one that takes the first step. I was the firstborn son. And El Camino Community College was just, a mile away from the house.
Oh, wow.
So I went over to El Camino College, and all of a sudden it was something like the difference between community college and high school was just stark. All of a sudden I was more independent, choose my classes, and look around for things that interested me. Of course, arts always did. I was a singer. And John Kennedy was running for president at the time. Wow. And he inspired... just about everything he said inspired me and a lot of young kids in 1960. We worked on his campaign, Youth for Kennedy, in 1960 down there. I wasn't even old enough to vote quite yet till the next year, but we worked really hard, went to the Ambassador Hotel, got a chance to meet him and his brother.
Oh, you met him?
Yes,
Wow.
actually several times. My late wife was a journalist.
Okay.
So when she went on to San Jose and I went to Long Beach, she invited me to his press conference at San Jose, and we got a chance to meet him again. And so we became very enthused, and quite frankly, I came to believe that politics was my avenue, was my route to making a difference, having some impact on the things that I had seen that I thought were, just not right.
Sure.
And so that was my inspiration, my motivation. It all happened in Lawndale, California, El Camino College. And then the morning after I was elected student body president, my father dropped dead in our driveway quite suddenly of a heart attack. I was 19, he was 44. And it was a terrible shock. When we got through initially, my mother and I sat down, does this mean I need to quit college and get some kind of work to help with the boys and with her. But we figured out financially how I could continue on at Long Beach State. And I got singing gigs over there when I got there. The department heard my situation, realized we were not in great economic straits. So next thing I know, the school has helped me get a job at a local Temple Israel, and I sang Shabbat services every Friday night. Tenor soloist, and then First Congregational Long Beach, and cobbled together some nights when things were tough. We'd go down to a bar in Belmont Shore with a 3-leaf binder full of songs.
Full of songs, and just
sing
go to town.
Go to town with a bunch of fairly overserved people asking for requests. As a result, I don't sing the Hawaiian Wedding Song anymore. But it was a great learning experience. I was able to get my BA, served a couple of years out in the Navy as a corpsman, and then came back 1964 and began teaching the first male under 4th grade to teach a first grade class in Long Beach, California.
Really?
And I all of a sudden was confronted with a typical classroom with 36 black 6-year-olds.
Okay.
All looking at this dude thinking, okay, show me what you got. And I fell in love with them. They fell in love with me.
That's great.
But when I realized the inequity in education. I had student taught in an upper middle class school in Lakewood, and they had everything. When I got to John G. Whittier in the urban inner city of Long Beach, they had nothing. We bought our own school supplies. We changed our own environment. We had to provide food. They would arrive hungry. And you can't teach kids to read who are hungry.
Nah, not at all.
So we bought food. There was no free lunch program at the time. And I was about my second year. I just decided, this is not right. There's something wrong when you offer, in a democracy, free public education, but some have better than others. That set me on my path. And then in March of 1968, my advisor at USC said, we think you have leadership capability and you ought to be a school administrator. And I said, I've only been a teacher 2.5 years.
Only 2.5 years?
Yeah. And he said, no, I'll tell you what, we've given you a good theoretical basis here at USC. You'll get your master's degree in June, but the best way to learn how to run a school and deal with the complex issues of children and parents and teachers is to go do it.
100%.
So out of 3 opportunities, I chose one out in the San Joaquin Valley near Delano.
Oh, my goodness.
And arrived in March of 1968 as the new school principal of a school of about 900 kids, mostly migratory farm workers.
Wow.
And at the same time was when Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, and Lariat Leon were forming the Farm Workers Union.
Get out of here.
Yeah. And I made the mistake, well, in retrospect, was it a mistake? I felt an impulse that you cannot sit there and watch discrimination and bigotry and what was going on there and affecting children the way it did without doing something about it. So I aligned very closely with the farm workers, an impulse that at the time seemed like the right thing to do. But in about 2 years, I became unwelcome there with the grower-dominated school board that did not consider these people and their children in the same way they considered their own. And they ran the school board, they ran the kitchens, they ran everything. And I just finally told them one day, you won't even let us serve rice and beans to Mexican-American children when they're a surplus commodity and plentiful because you think they ought to be eating mashed potatoes and gravy like you do. That's just an example.
Sure.
So I finally accepted a call to Fountain Valley in Orange County. Went down there and took a school of about the same size, but mostly upper middle class. And again, I was still troubled by the teaching experience, that first administrative experience. So I started my doctoral work at USC, but something was troubling me, and I realized you have to run for office and start changing this dynamic.
Yes.
So I ran for the Huntington Beach Union High School Board of Trustees, and I beat 21 candidates to my total shock, using all the techniques I'd kind of pictured working in the Kennedy campaign, and I won. And after a year or two, people came to me and said the incumbent assemblyman, a conservative, has labeled early childhood education a plot by the school system to try to take children away and raise them in kind of like an Israeli kibbutz system.
What?
It was ridiculous and absurd, and a number of other really absurd comments. So I set my sails on defeating him. So I tried in 1974, came within about 1,200 votes, but lost. So the speaker called me and said, we never believed a Democrat could ever win that district, but you came so close we're going to help you this time. So Linda and I agreed, my then wife, we'll go do this. So we tried again, and this time I beat him by a good margin. And I got the opportunity to serve 2 terms.
That's incredible.
In the state assembly. But that's how it all started.
This episode is brought to you by Systems to Solutions. Think smarter, work better. Welcome to Systems to Solutions.
You have it was so much that you just offered right there. I don't know where to jump in.
I probably rambled too much.
No. I think it's incredible.
That was a Cliff Note version of what led me to the assembly.
But I think that's incredible. I do want to go back to this part that you talked about, your father passing away.
Yeah.
The day that you became student body president.
Next morning.
The next morning. Talk about the range of emotions. How do you think that has affected you in your journey?
like a lot of 19-year-olds, you're not totally in grace with your dad at the moment.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
You're the first one to go to college. You come home with different ideas, and you're full of excitement and passion, and you challenge just about everything in your environment.
Everything.
That must have been a total pain in the
Everything.
neck or lower, and yet he handled it, I think, pretty well. But my first initial reaction was, I'm not in good place with him, and he's gone, and it's too late to fix it.
Yeah.
So the answer to your question is at first, it really had a real tough impact. Then, of course, there was the economics. What do I do with Mom? What do I do with my younger brothers? And she was suicidal for a while, and I had to kind of tend to her, come home from Long Beach State repeatedly to deal with issues until she got centered. So it was tough. On the other hand, I don't deal in a lot of cliches, but you know what they say, sometimes if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger.
Yeah.
This did not kill me. I believe in a lot of ways it did make me stronger because you have to assert, as the eldest son, at least I thought I did, I have to assert now my presence here.
Exactly. Yeah.
And be that man all of a sudden that's missing in our lives. And he was quite a dominant figure.
You know, I think about it. My father he was in my life, but he was in and out of prison. And I grew up in a single parent household, but I was oldest of 8 brothers and sisters.
Ooh.
All half brothers and sisters, but we were all acted as if we were one. And to your point, assuming that role, being the oldest of, wanting to provide for and support, and understanding that the pressure that also comes with that. I think about going to college and saying, I have to be successful. Not maybe, like I have to.
You have to.
I have to.
I had the same feeling.
Right. And so tell me about this transition to the Navy. How did that come about?
It's a very long story, but the short version is I always had this feeling that my father prized a kind of more, how to put it, athletic, sports-oriented, and hyper-masculine kind of model.
Okay.
That he continually tried to impose on me in a lot of ways, well-intentioned, I'm sure, because dads think they have to prepare their sons to go do, battle or whatever. So one day on the way to school, I saw a poster of a Marine officer in full military garb with sword at side, and thought, I'll bet my dad would be happy if I become a Marine officer. So without any to-do, I signed up and went to Marine Officer Candidate School the summer between my freshman and sophomore year of college. And by the end of it, I came to the realization I am not a Marine.
A Marine?
I'm not going to be hacking people with bayonets and doing all that kind of stuff. I know I'm patriotic. I want to serve the country. I want to do my duty.
Yes.
But I want to do it in some kind of service way. So when I got back, I told my community college counselor, who said, by the way, I never thought you were a Marine in the first place, which I couldn't figure out exactly what he was trying to say. But I found out that the Marine Corps is a branch of the Navy and that one could transfer. So I transferred to the Navy and became a medical corpsman and took care of Marines on the aircraft carrier when they put me on the USS Constellation. It was kind of ironic because we have a detachment of 500 Marines on every one of our aircraft carriers. And they're, of course, to go ashore if they needed to, and they needed care, they and the others. So I became a corpsman and took care of them and others. And then after about a year, they sent me to the hospital ship Haven in Long Beach for the second year.
Okay.
And because I was a reservist, they let me out early. So bottom line is I did not become a Marine officer, but I did serve and loved it, actually. It was a great educational experience.
But not only did you serve, but you were also there during the Cuban Missile Crisis.
I was, and that was 13 days of, to tell you the truth, terror, because I had just married the July before, and was in love and hopeful about my future, et cetera. And all of a sudden, the executive officer is saying we could be at war within days, and if so, we'll get orders to go interdict missiles being sent to Cuba by Russia. So we were told to write messages home to our families and be prepared.
Really?
It was probably the most scared I've ever been. But it was amazing how people pull together in crisis like that and got ourselves through it. And I was a singer at the time, so I sang for all the church services, not only on our carrier, but when we were back in port, I sang on other ships and officers' events and so forth. So it ended up being good. I learned a little bit about the health system, which was good. Later in the legislature, I'm vice chair of the health committee, and I've been a corpsman and dealt with doctors and nurses, so it was helpful.
So tell me that I would have been scared out of my mind. No question about that, especially during that time. Tell me, when did this whole singing piece come into play? Was your mom a singer, your dad a singer? Where did the whole musicianship come from?
No, I know. You know, most children, as you know, can sing and want to. They want to sing.
I still think I can sing.
Well, of course you do. Yeah. Well, that's good because most people lose it by the time they're your age. But I learned not only did I want to sing from the beginning. I mean, I was 6 or 7. I was always in the choruses and all that. And by the time I got to high school, I can still remember my father getting a call from my choral director, and he said, you know, we think your son, Denny, has some potential as a soloist to step out from the chorus, but he could benefit from vocal training.
Okay.
And I can still hear my dad laughing, saying, well, our current objective is to feed him and his brothers, because there was not a lot of money laying around for private lessons. So when I got to Long Beach State, I went and earned the money for my lessons by singing. Weddings, funerals, until you could just, you didn't think your throat would last. But I had loved to sing, and when I was a teacher and I had those 36 little 6-year-olds, I realized that every minute they would rather be dancing around and singing and loving poetry and to be read to and all that kind of stuff. And I realized it's too bad that by the 4th or 5th grade we lose that somehow and we succumb to peer pressure. Yeah. And we stop realizing that we were all made to sing and to dance and to move and to, So anyway, that's the story. And it's to this day. As you know, I've continued to sing kind of for community events and stuff like that, and haven't since COVID. But it's something that never leaves you.
You know, as I listen to you, and you were talking about singing, especially with when you're teaching, I had chills because I remember being in elementary school, singing, and enjoying it.
You bet.
But you're absolutely right. Something changes when you hit that 4th, 5th, 6th grade, where it's like, all right, you tend to be maybe embarrassed, or I don't know what it is. You're too cool for school, but something absolutely happens. And I just remember the joy.
Especially now, right?
Oh, I mean, absolutely.
Because we don't have arts in the schools to the extent we had when I was coming up.
Yeah. So my wife and I have been very intentional about our kids.
Great.
And so they ride horses, they do it all, but they actually are in the School of Rock. And one of them is a singer, and one of them plays the drums.
Is that right?
And I love it. And I'll tell you, the last performance they had, nobody saw me, but I started getting tears in my eyes. Because not only because of the access they had, but also I can see the purity and the joy of them. And we're talking about 2 kids of color, right? 2 black kids that are singing Bush and singing all these different songs that I didn't grow up singing. But to see the level of joy they had. So when you said that, it was something that just I felt it. And I think that's a big piece.
It is. You know that phrase, go dance like no one was watching?
Yeah.
Well, when you're dealing with elementary school children, they do everything as if no one was watching. Yeah. They sing,
they do.
They dance, they're all outside of themselves as if no one was watching and judging. And then, unfortunately, as we say, those circumstances kind of intrude. But, as a grown-up example of what we're talking about, in 1984, after I had come out, we'll get to that.
Yes.
There was an announcement at a local event that there was going to be an attempt to form a gay men's chorus here in Sacramento.
Yeah.
And I went to the first meeting and said, I'm a singer and I would love to do this. And so 12 of us started the now 40-year-old Sacramento Gay Men's Chorus.
I didn't know that. I didn't know you started that.
We met in a house over at Curtis Park and formed a chorus and got it started. In the early days, in 1980, in the early 80s, it was dangerous here to identify as LGBT.
Yeah.
So we called ourselves the Sacramento Men's Chorus. And we stood in even rows in tuxedo pants and white shirts and ties and sang pretty well like, you know, Palestrina and Bach and played it safe. And I'll never forget about the, 8th year or so, the board called me and said, you'll be very proud to hear that we've decided it's safe now to call ourselves the Gay Men's Chorus.
Wow.
So this year we'll be celebrating their 40th anniversary, and now, you know, they get out there and put boas around their necks and sing songs at the top of their lungs, and are creative and allow the art, the passion for singing to come out. It's a joy to watch how that's evolved.
It has to be. So tell me about that. Tell me about those times, right, where it was, you know, not outwardly said or spoken, to now where it's more socially accepted. Tell me about those times, those experiences.
Too frequently it was spoken,
Okay.
and it was in that way that any person of color has felt, heard, experienced their entire lives.
Okay.
And the same thing goes with any other marginalized minority.
Sure.
There's always people who will say, make comments, do things that were difficult. But of course, coming out of the legislature and just taking this lobbyist job made things complicated. And as you know, but may not be commonly known, I came to the realization I was gay while I was in the legislature.
Really? I didn't know that.
And I'm one of those, and I speak about this at the Renaissance program at Sac State. I was one of those that never had a clue growing up. So the theory is that because of my dad maybe, or Lawndale, California, or whatever, I must have so successfully repressed the whole idea that I actually did totally fall in love with my wife, who was our homecoming queen at El Camino. And we had...
It's not hard to fall in love with a homecoming queen.
well,
I'm teasing.
especially this one, because she wasn't just beautiful, she was just an amazing person.
Gotcha.
And so we fell in love, got married, had the 2 kids, and until I went away to the legislature, I never had a clue. So we don't have time for me to go into that in detail. Let it suffice to say that by the time I lost re-election in 1980, I had come to the irrefutable conclusion I am gay and I'm going to have to forge a new life because I'm only 40. If I had been a great deal older, I probably would have just hung in.
You think so?
I don't know. It's hard to know what you would have done, but I decided that living authentically is more important than anything else, probably.
Absolutely.
So I went home. I was outed, actually.
You were out?
I was outed. I think it was 1982. I was floundering, of course, at first, because if you've been raised entirely thinking you're heterosexual and you've never had a country experience, someone has to start telling you, how does this culture work? I didn't know how to date a man. I didn't know how the culture worked. So one invitation I accepted was to go to a gay pride event in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And I went down and I said, what do you do? Well, we watch a parade, and then we go and we take our shirts off, drink beer, and dance. I thought, well, I can do that.
I got that.
I got
that covered.
So I went over there and was doing all the above when a young man came up, tapped me on the shoulder, and said, Assemblyman,
No.
it looks like we have something in common. I looked at it, and it was the young son of a couple that had worked on my campaigns for years. Turns out he was gay and felt all of a sudden instantly validated by the fact that this kind of guy on a pillar for him, who had been raised working on my campaigns, he thought, well, if he can be gay, I can be gay.
That's big.
So he immediately, I took him over to the side and said, I'm not quite sure what I'm doing here yet. So I hope you'll be discreet while I'm figuring things out. He assured me he would. And then he went right home to my daughter and our home in Huntington Beach and told my daughter. So when I got back to the Capitol the next day, she called and said, Dad, it looks like we need a talk.
Wow.
That led to a talk with her brother and her mother and a new life for all of us in a way. So I hung in with them in every conceivable way, economically, and visit every weekend with them, et cetera. But it did change our lives appreciably. And that led to another layer of my leadership experience and activism.
Yes.
Because I had always been involved in civil and human rights, and so had Linda. And we were very active in the anti-Vietnam War effort and other things like that. I didn't ever think about or hear the words LGBT, the letters LGBT. That hadn't occurred to me. But now it occurred to me, you've always been concerned about people of color. You've always been concerned about all this kind of stuff, but now you are one. You are a marginalized minority. Are you going to take this crap?
Right.
Are you going to be told you're light in your loafers and all the derogatory things they say about a person? It's a simple matter of orientation.
Right.
So it pissed me off enough that I formed a thing called the Capital Network.
Okay.
In conjunction with gay men who were on the down low from the former Reagan administration, now in the Duke Majan administration. Turns out there were gay men and women all through the government, of course. So we met secretly in my office in the old Senator Hotel when I became a lobbyist. We met every week and reinforced one another and worked with a gay member of Senator Roberti, the Senate President's staff, to try to affect policy. And live for the day when the first openly gay elected person would come, which was Sheila Kuehl of Los Angeles, and then support her. And then the Cat Pack was the first, I helped form the first political action committee for the LGBT community here, where we actually lobbied legislators and contributed to the campaigns of those who were solidly behind minority progress. And that led me deeper and deeper into kind of the non-elected political milieu.
Yeah. That is, wow. That is some history there. I think about, and it's a question for you. For a viewer that's watching, doesn't matter color, shape, size, I don't care, but is questioning themselves at this moment and trying to figure out how to go about it, but also concerned about my role in leadership, what advice or feedback would you give that individual?
Take one step at a time.
Okay.
Get in touch with what the orientation dysphoria or confusion is all about.
Okay.
If you need therapy, get it.
Yes.
If you need to get to the LGBT center or to one of our university centers where they have trained personnel, talk out your feelings, what you're experiencing.
Yes.
In many cases, there are peer mentors that can be assigned who have been through this. That's why I'm doing what I do with the Renaissance program, because it turns out there are lots of people who did what I did. They were either unwitting or they thought, I'll never have a life if I don't marry and have children, so they went ahead and did it anyway.
Yeah.
And they now need, if they're interested in coming out and living authentically, they need to know how to navigate this complicated territory. So get in touch with that first. If it turns out you can then live quite comfortably in your new skin, as it were, or if not new, the authentic skin, and it occurs to you that you ought to be doing something bigger.
Yes.
On behalf of others, you know, we've had so many commit suicide rather than come up with, you know, with the reality. And unfortunately, many of those that were sent to me were young men of color.
Yeah.
From churches and educational enterprises and families where it was not accepted.
Oh, yeah.
And so they had been told, you're going to go to hell. I mean, your mortal soul is at question here. So I've tried to help people. I don't want to mess with your religious beliefs, but I want to assure you that from my viewpoint, you have to live on this earth as long as you're here the way you conceive you were meant to live.
Yes.
And then if you're called, as I felt, strongly called into leadership on behalf of others, then go do that.
Yeah.
Find people who are doing it. Don't try to assert yourself above them. Go be part of the team. Follow first.
Yeah.
And then take the lead when it comes.
I have to tell you, I have to give special kudos to my mother.
To whom?
My mother.
Your brother.
Mother. Yes. So we grew up in a very Southern Baptist church, the whole deal. My grandmother was there. But one thing that my family, and not just my mother, my grandmother, my entire family, and yes, we have the manly men in our family, of course. However, one thing that was very clear at an early age is doesn't matter who they are, what they are. It's either are they a good person or are they not? And I've lived with that through my whole life. Even much so, interesting enough, in elementary school, one of my best friends was gay. And they never really talked about it, but people knew, and he knew. And at the end of the day, I didn't care because he was my friend, and we ran track together, we did all types together. And whatever he did is what he did, but he was my friend.
Yeah.
And I had his back 100%.
Because that ought to count most, right?
Yep. And if you're watching, you know you're my buddy, because where I came from, the neighborhood didn't support it. They weren't friendly. But I wish somebody would have said something. It would have been a problem.
Yeah.
Just because that's how I was raised. If you're my friend, you're my friend. I don't care who, what color, shade, any of that. So
Human sexuality turns out to be one of the most complicated aspects of our lives as humans. Some people ask, did you still love your wife? She's been gone. We lost her to Alzheimer's about 5-6 years ago. But we were really in love till the last day, and I was the only one with her when she died, singing to her and showing her pictures and doing our thing, and we'd collaborated in raising our kids. But I've been married to Michael, Michael, as you know, for 33 years, and I love him in the exact same way I loved Linda. Are there differences? Well, yes, obvious. But in terms of love, the friendship that accompanies love and creates the affectionate bond that's important between two human beings, you can have it with a woman, you can have it with a man. And what Kinsey taught us is we're all ordered along a scale. Some are so heterosexual on one end, and some are so homosexual on the other that they cannot conceive of having a relationship with anyone but those to whom they're attracted. But there are a great pool of us in the center, it turns out, that could respond in other directions.
absolutely.
And so Kinsey told us in, 1956, something that a lot of people tried to deny, but we've known it since then. So I just decided at some point, don't let that be the thing that stopped your quest for leadership and to have impact, to create change. And so I set off saying, put that aside, put orientation aside. You'll have to deal with it, of course. But follow instinct, follow impulse.
Yes.
That's what made me join when Donnie Blumenstock first
Good
called
old
me about
Donnie.
ALF.
Yes.
She said, we're going to try to coalesce leaders in this region. Well, I was all over that, and I was, as you know, a Class 1 fellow in ALF. And all through my adult life, I have followed impulse, opportunity, and taken risks.
I love it.
And that was really important.
Yes.
If I could give you an example.
Please.
I was school principal in Fountain Valley and running for the school board of the high school district at the same time. And one day, a group of people came to my office, and they told me that they had developed, in the wake of the Watts civil disturbances, they had followed the McCone Commission study. And what they had found is that many of these young people of color that were out setting fires and burning things down and revolting the way they were was because of a lack of hope, to some degree, based on lack of universal literacy in the community. Lots of them couldn't yet read and use the language effectively and efficiently, and they were stymied at job opportunities, et cetera. So it only took a trigger to take a long-standing group of social issues to cause them to say, we've had enough of this.
Oh, yeah.
You know? And so they said, we've developed a model that we think, if followed carefully, will help youngsters of this group, socioeconomic group, to learn to read more quickly. And we've heard you speak, and we think you'd be very effective.
Wow.
I said, well, you know, I'm a school principal. I'm aiming to be a superintendent, and getting my doctorate at USC, and that's all I'm into right now. So one of them took out a folder and said, here is the Fountain Valley School District salary schedule. You're here, master's degree, second year. Here's where you'll be in 15 years if you stay here.
Wow.
We'll pay you that now if you'll leave.
Oh, my goodness.
I know. So I went home that night and said to my dear Linda,
We need to talk.
Kirsten, I said, I have this opportunity to go and help move this model.
Move this
it's
needle.
an entrepreneurial move. Never thought of myself as entrepreneurial. It's an entrepreneurial move, and it's risk-taking.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't work, Linda said, well, you can go back to being a school principal. Let's go for
support. I love
Big
it.
hug. And off I went. So for the next 5 years, I not only ran for the school board, then I ran for the assembly while working for them, built that model and put it in 15 school districts and several youth facilities, and got a taste of what that side was like. But I have never regretted that I took that opportunity.
That's incredible.
To take a divergent course.
And I think it's special that they came to you. That says something.
I never could quite figure that out, except when people are looking to build something like that, they're looking for people who, when put into a holistic context, will do their part.
Yes.
And they saw me as persuasive, I guess smart enough to master the model and that sort of thing, and then to inspire and motivate others to go do what it took to adopt this kind of approach to teaching kids. And I learned in doing that I did have the capability to inspire and motivate. All I needed was to check the hubris, adopt a servant leader attitude with more
Love it.
the kind of humility that causes people to think, he's inspiring me, he's motivating me, but I don't want to be a part of a sales pitch.
Right.
I want somebody I can believe in, that believes in himself and what he's talking about, but in a humble way.
Yeah.
And once I kind of got that kind of into my head, there were lapses because we're not perfect.
Yeah.
There were little lapses where those embarrassing moments we all have in our life when you haven't lived up totally to what you believe. But I think that's been the key. Take risks, take advantage of opportunity, follow instincts and impulses that suggest to you that you could lead, even though most of us have imposter syndrome up the yin-yang.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
The 100%.
Some mornings I'd look in the mirror and say, boy, do I have them fooled. Because I'm not all that.
Yeah.
And the next thing, you're getting a promotion, and you're just thinking,
how did this happen?
how'd that happen? You know?
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, as we get ready to close out this episode of Layers of Leadership, any advice you would give anybody that's watching that have or aspire to follow in your footsteps?
Boy, as you know, it's a complicated question, and there's a complicated answer that we don't have time for. But basically, learn, be open to learning new things, be open to new possibilities and opportunities. Try to avoid being fearful about stepping forward.
Okay.
And stay humble.
Yes.
Understand that servant leadership means the only purpose of leadership that we can really figure out is to serve human beings and to advance the quality and life of our species and to ensure the survivability and sustainability of our planet. I mean, there's just so much to be done, and every single person has the capacity to do something about it, even if they don't know it yet.
Absolutely.
So step up to the plate, follow those instincts, and good luck with that. And live authentically in your true skin.
Yes.
Be proud of who and what you are.
All right. Is there any books and or podcasts or anything that you would leave for the reviewers?
You know, I'm not prepared in that regard. I haven't listened to more than 4 or 5 podcasts.
Go ahead and add Layers of Leadership to your podcast list.
I'm adding that right away, of course. Yeah, adding that one right away. And from a book standpoint, to tell you the honest truth, I don't read much self-help stuff anymore. It was all the vogue in the 60s and 70s. I read most of them.
There we go.
And most of them seemed to me kind of a regurgitation of platitudes that I didn't personally find very helpful. It seems to me, I don't exactly know much about the whole creation business, but I do have this sense that we have been given, biologically, physiologically, intellectually, we've been given the basic elements. And what you just need to do is have confidence that they're there, pull them together, and use them in a strategic, surgical kind of way to advance what you think you're here for.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on Layers of Leadership podcast. As I've told you in the beginning, you are a trusted friend and advisor, and I just appreciate you for taking the time to not only share your journey with me, but share our journey with those that are viewing Layers of Leadership. And
I feel the same way about you. I spied you in the NELT program, and I know
Yes, you
that
did.
one is going to step out from the pack, and you certainly have.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's a wrap.